All right. Hello and welcome to another episode of Chekpoint, the podcast highlighting and telling the stories of influential leaders in and around the sports industry. Today, we are beyond excited to welcome our next guest to the show, Greg Moore. Greg has been involved in the game of baseball for the majority of his life. And from his playing days at the University of San Francisco to an extensive tenure as a coach with several stops along the way, back at his alma mater at USF, Cal State Northridge, a stint with Team USA, and is now currently serving as the head coach for the St. Mary College baseball team. Greg has been passionate about baseball, but more passionate about coaching, which led him to start Sevwins, a platform that gives coaches the ability to impact more lives and ensure success beyond sports by achieving just 7 wins a day. Greg, we're super excited to have you on Chekpoint. How you doing today?
Scott, I'm good. Thanks for having me. I got to watch your first 2 releases, and I'm impressed, and I'll be a subscriber soon.
Amazing, man. And when I heard your background and, the impact you're having with folks, in college, at the youth level, and then, now building a platform to make an impact beyond the game. We were just as excited to get you on the show. So, for all the first-time listeners that haven't heard Chekpoint before, like I said in the beginning, we're picking influential leaders and using this as a stop along the way to learn how Greg got here, what he's currently doing, and where he sees the industry going over the next 3 to 5 years. So Greg, without wasting any time, would love to take a dive in, and why don't you go ahead and let the listeners know, who you are and sort of how you ended up at St. Mary's College.
Sure. Well, I started out as a struggling baseball player trying to figure out what I was going to do beyond high school, and I was good enough to get into Long Beach City College, where my junior college coach told me on the first day of practice, told the whole team, you're either here because you're not good enough as a player or not a good enough student. And I sat on that bench, looked at my teammates, and thought, well, I'm not good enough in the classroom or on the field. And that really was a moment of truth for me. But it also began to help me understand what baseball can teach young people. I went to University of San Francisco to play. Was lucky enough to play for Rich Hill, Nino Geritano, 2 guys who are outstanding coaches and people. And then I coached at USF for many years. I spent 1 year at University of Washington. And then I came back to USF, odd circumstances, spent 4 more years there. And then I was a head coach at Cal State Northridge for 6 years. And last year, almost a year to the day, I arrived in Moraga. Now I'm at St. Mary's College and enjoying every day here at this place.
Amazing, man. And the journey, we're going to unpack that because, you got some nuggets that ultimately, led to the current venture that you're running, in tandem with coaching, which is Sevwins. And, really excited to talk about, how technology is a vehicle and a medium where you can take all of your coaching knowledge and now start to disseminate that out to other coaches and players to really start to spread the love there. So, one of the questions I was curious about is, obviously being a player, being a coach, baseball's been in your blood. What was it like to be a coach for Team USA, and represent the national team, which is something that is just so unique as an experience?
Well, it's an honor. That's something that goes without much mention, but just to be called, to be asked. And I told Eric Campbell, the director, when he asked if I would be the pitching coach for the collegiate team, I said, Eric, I'll wash the floors. I'll Windex the windows, whatever you need me to do. I just would love to be part and help us win a gold medal. And the best part is seeing the players. And that will always be the best part because you have these guys who have been told their whole lives that they're the best players in the country at their age level. And they are for the most part.
Yeah. But
then when they put USA on their chest and they stand for the national anthem, you really see the humility that they need going into professional baseball and for life. They realize something's bigger than them. So as an educator, I like watching them be educated on the important things in life. And USA Baseball does a great job with that, let alone you see other parts of the world and you watch these young people go to places like Japan and Mexico and look around and they come home more grateful for what they're doing, but also where they live. It's really a beautiful thing.
I mean, the power of sport, right? Like, I mean, we try and teach so many lessons in parallel with sport and business. It's sport and politics. I mean, you can really use it as, a one-to-one parallel there. And I think that word perspective is just key. And, you do get a great perspective as a collegiate athlete, as a pro athlete, but I mean, just doing it on a national scale there, it's something that football, you don't really get a chance to do. And so anytime I get a chance to pick someone's brain on what it's like to do it, playing the same game, lacing up their cleats the same way, but over in Japan, like you said, or Mexico, it's just always fascinating. And super interesting there. Now I'm curious, as you made sport and baseball a lifestyle for you, are there any pivotal moments that stick out through your journey where it was like, I am cementing myself, in this career path? And, do any moments stick out to you there along your journey?
Yeah, it's more about people that I've had the chance to meet and how they've changed my perspective, as you use that word. The first person and the main person is Nino Geritano. He's still the head coach at University of San Francisco. I played for him for 4 years, and that's because I was injured for 2. So I went to junior college, got 6 years in college sports. But to see the way that he made college athletics a family, he's got the Italian traditional mindset, but he's also a very good baseball man who knows how to teach life lessons through the sport. So when I watched him do it, I watched him after a tough loss, a lot of tough losses, hit ground balls to his son. He was always teaching us little life lessons around the field in terms of how to look at sport, look at life, get prepared for both. So that was the biggest thing in my career. I always wanted to be a police officer to help people. But then when I saw how he was able to reach people and prepare them for life, it changed my perspective on what coaching could be. So that's the main turning point in my life in terms of wanting to do this every day. And I couldn't be happier as an educator who happens to wear a hat.
I love it. And we've had some guests on, that were educators, that were in the administrative role. And I think the through line that we're seeing are just, people that have taken an aggregate of all of their experience and they're just so eager to give it back. Right. And, something that I've lived by is, reach one, teach one. And that was sort of the spawning of this podcast, where it's like, we can get so many great leaders to come on and tell their story in a time where sports really is in turmoil and our country is in turmoil, and
Sure.
Hell, humanity's in turmoil right now. We don't really know what's going on. And so really encouraging when you hear why you came back into sport, which I think is super powerful. Now, I'm curious because I did a little digging on you. So when you won most inspirational on back-to-back seasons, was he your coach, or, when did you win those as a player?
Coach G was my coach at that time. And, I always say that the reason I won those awards is because they felt sorry for the guy that was injured, going through some shoulder surgeries, but he was still trying as hard as he would if he was an All-American. By that time, I was not a good player. So I think they were in appreciation of a little effort. And it's still an award there, and I take pride in that. I graduated from that school, met my wife there. So to know that award's still given, it means a lot to me because he's the one that gives it.
Super cool. Super cool. Yeah, I saw that and I was like, I'm going to have to figure out a way to pepper him with this question here. So, so cool. Well, look, we're going to take a little transition here, right? So, we're starting to get to know who Greg is, how he got here. I'm really curious, through your tenure as a coach, the landscape has changed tremendously. And, Chek was built because we saw a gap in the way per diems were distributed to athletes, just another technical application that can help sports programs. But through your tenure of a coach, what has been some of the larger changes that you've seen with the addition of technology to the game of baseball?
To the game of baseball and to the players, I see a growing detachment between the player and their sport. If it's about the label and what they're pushing to do next, there's a hollow part of the sport. But if we stay to the essence, the fundamentals of what sports are, it's more human nature than psychology or sociology. You talk about the country in turmoil. When we keep the sport as something that teaches life lessons for these young people and teaches us still, then it has its beauty. But when we get too far ahead of ourselves and we start thinking about what the mechanism is to deliver me to the next level, that's where we lose the players. And 15 years ago, 17 maybe, I saw players coming in with almost, it was kind of a hollow look in their eyes. They were done with the recruiting process and they had arrived in Division I baseball, but they didn't have the joy in their eyes that we had growing up, that the sport is the sport, the game is the challenge, and then you learn by diving in fully. It was almost a look over the horizon to see what the sport was going to deliver. And I think that's going to go back to basics, especially after COVID. You know, people are just appreciating those small things, that getting out on the field. I see it with 17, 18-year-olds. They just want to be on a baseball field, feel the grass under their feet. And it has changed. And we got to get back to basics. We got to get back to fundamentals. It's too beautiful to lose. Sports are not a mechanism. Sports are a lifestyle and a classroom to learn life lessons.
Interesting. And so on that point, you know, I mean, one of the topics we've been covering quite a bit on the show is name, image, likeness, right? And really, how do we take the athlete that was, you know, ultimately the vehicle for the NCAA making so much money? How do we now start to bridge that gap and make sure that the athlete stays focused on academics, stays focused on their sport, and now add in, you know, growing a personal brand and business? I'm curious, as a head coach, have you started to have any of these conversations with your players with NIL on the horizon?
Well, I'll tell you, what you're doing is exactly what I think we need to do. We need to educate them in financial discipline. We have to have them understand the value of a dollar. And again, that goes back to fundamentals. If we do that, then they start to use their transferable skills, the discipline they use at practice, the attention to detail they use to grow their craft. They start to understand that their checkbook or their savings account requires that same attention to detail. But I think the danger is in the language we use. Even when we start talking about a player's brand, I hear that a lot on social media. A player needs to learn in his college years that he's got to grow his character and a little bit of the understanding of who he is, but he's got to meet his rights and not assert his responsibilities in those college years. That has to be his primary goal. If we get away from that and it becomes a marketing venture, a personal marketing venture for an athlete, he's speaking the wrong language to himself, and he's going to go down a path that leads to, again, those hollow eyes. So I think we got to guard the language a little bit, educate them. They're very intelligent, 18 to 21, much more sophisticated than I was, maybe we were when we were coming through. You're younger than me, but they've got immense understanding and perspective because they see everything. We got to keep them to the discipline and the transferable skills of their sport, and not have them think about being self-marketers. That's a dead-end road until you truly understand your disciplines.
No, I you know, it's interesting. And I mean, I think, you know, depending on what lens we hear it from, everybody has a different perspective. And, you know, I mean, I always I am eager to hear a coaches, because, you know, they spend the most time one-on-one, right? They're right under the umbrella with those athletes. And so it's always fascinating to say, like, how are we going to, you know, keep all the foundation together when, you know, we may have one star pitcher who has the ability to go build that brand, right? Like, how do we keep that locker room cohesive? And so I think some of the challenges that are on the horizon, if we don't establish that foundation and get back to the blocking and tackling, then, you know, it could really come off the wheels there, or off the rails. And I'm going to use that to jump and plug Sevwins, because, you know, I've been fortunate enough to meet, you know, you and your co-founder. And, you know, I'd love for you just to tell the audience a little bit about what you guys are building over there. And because I think there's a one-to-one when we talk about keeping that foundation and the basic wins for athletes and coaches.
Sure. Sevwins is a program that builds into a young person's life simple checks. It's based on a 7-day cadence. Monday, they set weekly goals, and they are at the root of what a person is. Mind, body, spirit. We call it read for your mind, train for your body, and give for your spirit. And we want young people to get reps of setting good goals for their mind, setting good goals for how they're going to strengthen their body or improve it. And then the one that goes underserved sometimes is reps of giving, having them start to look up and say, who am I going to give to this week? Sometimes that breaks the rut that they get in, worried about their own thing, their perception. And then every day they check in. It's just a quick noon check-in where they give a quick response to how are you concentrating, how are you separating, and how are you communicating. And it's at noon for a reason, because they're running from lunch to practice, whether they're in high school or college. And for them to check in there, it's almost a quick reflection. Am I doing the fundamentals the right way at the right time after I come out of class, before I go to practice? The most powerful part, in my opinion, is Sunday night at 8 p.m. They get a reminder to do what's called a build on, work on. And it's a simple prompt. What are you going to build on? What did you do well this week? And what are you going to work on? What did you not do well? And we've done this now there's been over 40,000 commits on this app. And it's just been a professional pleasure to see how bright they are and see how quickly that their first response is something so insightful. And then Sunday night, they resharpen and they set those goals on Monday. And that cadence, day to day, week to week, it doesn't take more than 7 minutes for their life, but it starts to put their rudders in the right direction towards the blocking and tackling, towards the fundamentals of who they are. And then all the other actions can flow from there. But working with John Roberts and Matt French, they're so smart. And this was a concept I came up with, but they've really helped me put it in the hands of young people who need it. They need it desperately right now.
Amazing. Yeah. And for any athletic directors listening, coaches, parents, definitely check out SevWins. These guys are, it's proven, Greg has won championships, has, turned programs around at Northridge. And so this isn't a hypothesis. This is proven stuff that works. And I can just speak to it from an athlete, right? You get in this routine, and sometimes you forget about the fundamentals as you really start compounding, these different pillars of life. And, it's just so funny when we talk about coaching, even as an adult, like in the business world, I still need coaching, right? And so it's one of those things that if you are coachable and you're able to digest and have this self-reflection and accountability, you will see nothing but positive things. Whether that's building your brand, being an athlete, or just communicating with people like humans today, right? So super cool.
I appreciate you saying that it works, and it does. And what I talk about often is it doesn't work because of psychology or sociology. It works because it's the basics of who we are. I mean, people have told me, what a great idea. And I think it's the simplest idea. It's not mine. We're just taking what we learned 2,000 years ago and asking ourselves to get really good reps day to day, week to week at staying grounded in the fundamentals. So it's not my idea. I'm just lucky enough to have smart people around me that can help get it to where the students are. They're on their phones and they might as well get their growth reps while they're there.
Yeah. No, and I mean, look, at any time you get a coach that has a pedigree of taking elite athletes and making them better and building a cohesive unit to then go out and win, you might want to listen, right? Like I always told, if Michael Jordan was teaching me how to shoot a jump shot, I'm gonna tune in and listen to him, right? Or if I have a scientist talking to me, I'm gonna perk my ears up and listen. So super neat that you guys were all able to collaborate and get the tech force there with John and the coaching power behind yourself, and really excited to see where SevWins goes. I think there's big things on the horizon there. So So sticking in the theme of, sort of shake up, new things on the horizon, really curious to get a look underneath the hood of St. Mary's College and baseball in 2020. Obviously you guys have had all the conversations with COVID. Just speaking to the athletic department as a whole, how have you guys sort of handled it, and what are you doing with your teams right now to make sure that they stay sharp and ready to go for the season if we have it?
Yeah, we're going to have it, sanctioned or unsanctioned. We're playing games in a parking lot or we'll play on grass fields. We're going to play.
Love that.
I will say this, our athletic director here, Mike Matoso, has been so aggressive and smart at the same time. He's helped us get our students back. We've got all of our student athletes, at least on the baseball side, are back. And most are on campus that are supposed to be on campus, a few are off. And so we're doing a great job at St. Mary's because they've done a great job planning. But as far as baseball, it's interesting, but it's a great challenge. And I don't think it's that different. We're going to be in small groups for the first few weeks, but we want to be in small groups anyway. We will wash the balls and we'll have the temperature checks and guys will get tested, but it's kind of like looking around, and you and I have had some conversations off the camera. There's so much that is the same. Let's seize on what's the same about the sport and practice, and let's go get after it. There's a few things that are different, that are little hurdles that will take an extra 10 minutes a day. And that's our responsibility to meet those 10 minutes. But we're going, and our players are hungry to go. They want to get out on the field. They're like young stallions that just need to run.
Yeah, no, I believe it. I mean, I couldn't imagine trying to put myself and empathize with folks that, we'll call it seniors getting recruited to go to the next level, or, being in the prime of your career as you guys have a good team, that you've built there. I couldn't imagine being a player and going through this. On that note, though, because my background was in recruiting when I started in the sports tech world, how has COVID evolved or changed your recruiting process, which I know the fall ball is really heavy for you guys? What has that, experience been like?
Well, everything goes back to relationships. You have a little chaos in the recruiting landscape or in the world, and you just go to the people you trust. We can't go out on the road and watch games. We get a lot of video. Even Twitter is now active with recruits. But it all comes down to the person that you call to ask what the young man is really like and ask how he really plays or performs day to day. So it has shortened our look, and it's given us, one screen to look at as we get the videos. But you call people that you trust, who are good mentors around the students, the student athletes, and that's how we have to recruit for a short time. And to be honest, it's been a joy, because you get to reconnect deeply with guys who have their players' best interests in mind, and they're looking for the right fit too. If you trust them, we can still recruit whether we can leave the campus or not.
Yeah. And I think that, that segment right there in itself just goes to show, we as humans have the ability to adapt with whatever's thrown at us. Right. And so if you have a good foundation and you've done all the things, that you're supposed to do to build those relationships and just be a solid human being, regardless of what the outside environment throws your way, we'll find a way to adapt, and the successful people will rise to the top. The majority of people will stay in the middle, and the folks that weren't ready for it will sort of slip back down. And so, it's been really interesting to see in sports, some of the teams and athletic directors that were really forward facing. Man, Greg, they didn't miss a beat. They were like, hey, we already did virtual meetings. We were ready to go. And so, it's really quite fascinating just to see how quick, with whatever we're dealt, we'll figure out a way to overcome it. So, always cool though when you get to hear it from the coach's mouth instead of me as a spectator throwing all that garbage out there.
You're an athlete. You kick the ball a long way, and what you would enjoy, I think, is that you're seeing a separation, almost a pass-fail grade for the self-starters versus the guys that don't want to self-start, because over the past 4 months they've had to structure it on their own. There was no plan to follow, or much of a plan to follow, so they had to fight for fields, and they had to go find weight rooms and build backyard gyms. And the guys who are self-starters did it, and they've separated from the guys who maybe didn't want to put in the time and effort and just wanted to wait to see what would happen. So I think business people are getting the same lesson that college baseball players are getting. Don't wait around, get to work and figure out what you want to get done.
Man, I tell you, and the best lesson that I learned from football, right? Because being a punter, the team would practice for 2.5 hours. I had a 7-minute window, right? And then, I was over there either drinking water or Gatorade or who knows what I was doing. But it was always about, what are you doing to get better when no one's watching, right? And I think if I didn't go through the unique experience of being a punter and having to take mental reps where it's like no one's going to see the outcome from that except for yourself. Or, when there's nobody on the field, are you going to do the extra 20 drops to make sure you get there? To just further iterate on your point, man, when COVID came sliding downhill, it was second nature to kick in. And, I think that a lot of athletes, that's the intangibles that they talk about where, hey, you might not be able to throw a ball 90 miles an hour. That might not mean anything in business, but those reps with the rubber band after practice all the time, that's the stuff that gets you there. So
exactly. When nobody's watching, that's well said.
When no one's watching, right? So, well, cool. So now we know who you are. We know what you're currently doing. I'm really curious, where do you see this, this ship going over the next 3 years? We'll just start with, baseball in the NCAA and then maybe extrapolate that out a little bit.
Yeah, I think we're going to go back to normal. I may be overly optimistic, but I think we're going to play our season. I don't think it's going to be delayed or trimmed as far as schedule. And we're not going to know the difference. Now, it's possible we'll have fewer fans in the stands. We might do some more video streaming of our games and offer that to some of our older fans and supporters. And those are just good adjustments that should be made anyway. I think summer ball is going to be outstanding. We've got more players in college baseball now than at any point because of the expanded rosters. And I think we have better players because of what Major League Baseball has done. So college baseball is going to get better as far as quality of play this year and in the next 4 or 5. You figure if Major League Baseball is going to eliminate minor league teams, those high school guys will not sign. They'll come to college. So we're in a great position now to market our game and get it out. It's the best level of baseball aside from the big leagues. And some would argue it's better because it truly is a team game. These guys run hard down the line every time, and they play it for their teammates and their schools. So I think we've got a chance to seize on that and show people what college baseball is.
Love that. And I got to tell you, just talking on summer ball real quick, I've spent this summer here in Cape Cod, and it's not the same without baseball, right? It's a pastime that we have here as a country. I think it brings cities together. It brings people of all races, colors, religions together to rally behind something. And I got to tell you, just as a sports fan, I hope your optimism becomes a reality, because I don't like life without sports, never mind, missing Cape League baseball. And, I got to tell you, I don't know if jumping a little bit, but if you watched the Heat game last night, some of the basketball that's being played is incredible, but I still can't get over the virtual fans there. It's the most bizarre thing. So fingers crossed we get back to normal here sooner than later.
Well, you talk about fans, and a great picture that you made me think of is the sun setting in the Cape before a Cape League baseball game at a field that's not very developed, but it's great baseball. And you got a family going out with their lawn chairs. They're going to drop that on the grass, and they're going to sit and watch a baseball game for 3 hours. I've seen it out there watching those games, and there's nothing more beautiful than seeing that community just sit and enjoy 3 hours of a sport, let alone a great sport. And we'll get back to that. I think it's coming. Our lawn chairs just might have to be spread out a bit.
Yeah, that's well said. Well said. Well, cool. Well, this has been some incredible insight. To go ahead and start to wrap up the show, Greg, I got a question that, I've asked this one to everybody that I know. It's really fascinating to hear, where people take it. So, Greg, if you could tell the listeners one thing you've done in your life that you would recommend they do or experience in theirs, what would that be and why?
That's a great question. There are a lot of ways you could go down that road. I think what I've been very content with is that I never chase what's next. I've always enjoyed the group I get for the year that I get them. I get 9 months, sometimes 9.5 or 10 with a college baseball team. And just the beauty of that rhythm, it's got its own life, right? What does Nick Saban say? Every play has a life of its own. Well, every team has a life of its own. And I think it's the truth for all of us. Changes happen all the time with our families. But I think if I had any advice for a young coach, it would just be slow down and enjoy this. Enjoy the educational process that you're part of. And things happen when they happen, but there's nothing to chase. We're where we need to be.
Man, I love that answer. And I tell people every day, Greg, if you can work on just being where your feet are and not being too far in the future and not living too far in the past, then you can start to embrace and enjoy all of these moments, the good, the bad, the ugly, because the journey really is the destination, as the late Kobe Bryant would say. So, Greg, on that note, man, what a treat. You have dropped more nuggets than I think our listeners know what to do with. Why don't you let everybody know, if they want to learn more about SevWins, do you guys have a website, or what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, if you'd like to learn more about SevWins, sevwins.com. And we're really trying to engage people who are mentors to learn how we can do this the best way. But it is ready to go. And we've had people that have added it to their teams, and we're getting great feedback from coaches who get to know their players better. But some of the quotes we've gotten from the players, it's just been a subtle change in their life. That's what's inspiring us right now to figure out how to do this thing the right way. But look it up, sevwins.com. The engineer is the mastermind. He's really made this easy to use.
Love it. And, we'll go ahead and, throw Greg's social handles behind so everyone can follow St. Mary College's baseball as they get up and going. And Greg, again, from Chek and Chekpoint, thank you for coming on, and best of luck with your guys' upcoming season.
Scott, thank you. It's been great getting to know you.
Yes, sir. Talk soon.
Bye.